In the vast expanse of the Andromeda Coalition, where 1,000 alien species compete for dominance through genetic superiority, there exists one truth that has never been challenged: humans are the weakest link in the galactic food chain. Their short lifespans, fragile bodies, and primitive technology make them laughingstocks among the stellar empires. But Dr. Zara Velthera, the most brilliant xenogeneticist of the Krillian Empire, is about to discover that everything she believed about human weakness was a carefully orchestrated lie. When a routine blood analysis of a human prisoner reveals impossible genetic markers, she finds herself standing at the precipice of a revelation that will shatter the foundation of galactic civilization itself. What happens when the galaxy's most advanced scientist realizes that the species they've been hunting for sport might actually be the apex predators they've been searching for all along? And what price will she pay when she decides to bet everything on the most dangerous gamble in the universe, choosing a human as her champion in the ultimate trial of genetic supremacy? Some discoveries change science. Others change everything. Dr. Zara Velthera pressed her six-fingered hand against the cold metal surface of her laboratory wall, feeling the subtle vibrations of the massive research vessel as it cut through hyperspace. The scientific endeavor was the pride of the Krillian Empire, a floating city of laboratories and genetic research facilities that housed the galaxy's most brilliant minds. For 15 years, Zara had called this ship home, and, for 15 years, she had been searching for the perfect specimen. The Krillian Empire's survival depended on genetic superiority. Every century, the great powers of the Andromeda Coalition gathered for the trial of supremacy, where each species would present their finest warrior in combat that would determine political dominance for the next 100 years. The Krillians had won the last 3 trials, but their genetic pool was becoming stagnant. They needed fresh blood, new combinations, something that would give them an edge that no one could predict. Zara's pale blue skin shimmered under the laboratory's harsh lighting as she reviewed the day's collection reports. Her people had raided 17 different worlds in the past month, gathering specimens from species across the outer rim. Most were disappointments, weak creatures with predictable genetic patterns that offered nothing new. The humans from the third planet of the Sol system had been particularly pathetic. Their own governments had practically given them away in exchange for basic technology upgrades. She walked past rows of containment cells, each holding a different specimen. The Vorthan warrior in Cell 7 had shown promise until his genetic scan revealed a fatal flaw in his cardiovascular system that would make him collapse under extended combat stress. The crystalline being from Zirion 4 had interesting defensive capabilities, but their offensive potential was virtually non-existent. Every specimen told the same story, impressive in one area, fatally weak in others. The humans were kept in a separate section, mainly because they were so fragile that they needed special life support systems just to survive on the ship. Zara barely glanced at them anymore. Earth humans were useful only as control subjects, a baseline of weakness against which to measure other species. They lived barely 100 years, needed constant food and water, and could be killed by something as simple as a change in atmospheric pressure. Her communication device chimed, indicating that the automated analysis system had completed its daily batch of blood work. Zara made her way to the central analysis chamber, a circular room filled with holographic displays showing genetic patterns, protein structures, and cellular behavior. Normally, she would scan through the results quickly, looking for anything unusual, but today something made her pause. The display was showing an error message. Anomalous reading detected, sample H247 verification required. Zara frowned, her dark eyes narrowing as she pulled up the specific sample. H247 was from one of the humans, a male specimen they had collected from a backwater colony world. According to his file, he was nothing special, a maintenance worker named Markuschan who had been in the wrong place at the wrong time when their collection team had swept through his settlement. She ran the analysis again, thinking the equipment might be malfunctioning. The human samples always came back with the same predictable patterns: limited genetic diversity, slow healing factors, minimal disease resistance, and cellular structures that were laughably primitive compared to most spacefaring species. The second analysis returned the same error. Zara's heart began beating faster. In her 15 years of genetic research, she had never seen the automated system unable to classify a sample. She decided to run a manual analysis, using the most sensitive equipment available on the ship. What she found made her stumble backward from the display console. The genetic pattern floating in front of her was impossible. The human's DNA contains sequences that shouldn't exist, not just in humans, but in any known species in the galaxy. There were genetic markers for regenerative capabilities that exceeded even the legendary healing factors of the Alterian warrior caste. His immune system showed adaptations that could theoretically allow survival in environments that would kill most spacefaring species within minutes. But that wasn't the most shocking discovery. Hidden within the seemingly simple human genetic code were dormant sequences that matched patterns from the most ancient genetic databases in Krillian archives. These were genetic markers that theoretically belonged to a legendary warrior species that had vanished from the galaxy millions of years ago, the progenitors. According to the oldest Krillian myths, the progenitors had been the ultimate warriors, beings of such genetic perfection that they had ruled the galaxy until they mysteriously disappeared. Most scientists believed they were fictional, stories told to inspire genetic research. But the patterns in Marcus Chen's blood were unmistakably similar to the theoretical progenitor genetic templates that had been reconstructed from ancient ruins. Zara ran the analysis a third time, then a fourth. Each result was identical. This human, this unremarkable maintenance worker from a primitive world, carried genetic potential that could revolutionize everything the galaxy thought it knew about warfare and survival. She accessed Marcus's detention file, studying his background more carefully. Born on a colony world called New Montana, he had lived an ordinary life until the Krillian collection team had identified his settlement as a good source of human specimens. He had been working in a mining facility when they took him, and had shown no resistance or unusual capabilities during transport. But genetic potential didn't always manifest without proper activation. Many species carried dormant genetic sequences that only emerged under specific conditions, extreme stress, certain chemical triggers, or specific training regimens. Zara found herself walking toward the human detention section without consciously deciding to go there. The corridors in this part of the ship were dimmer, with lower ceilings designed to accommodate the smaller stature of human specimens. The air recycling systems here were calibrated for their primitive respiratory needs, and the gravity was reduced to prevent their fragile bones from suffering damage. She stopped in front of cell H247. Marcus Chen sat on the simple metal bench that served as furniture in the containment cells. He was larger than most humans, approximately 6 feet tall with a solid build that suggested he had performed physical labor most of his life. His dark hair was unkempt from weeks in detention, and his brown eyes held the resigned expression that most specimens developed after realizing their situation. He looked up when he noticed her standing outside his cell, and, for a moment, their eyes met through the transparent barrier. "You're the scientist," he said quietly. His voice carried no anger or fear, just a simple statement of fact. Zara nodded, surprised that he was addressing her directly. Most specimens had learned that interaction with their captors rarely led to anything positive. "I've been watching the others," Marcus continued. "They take blood samples, run tests, then, some of them disappear. The strong ones go first, right? That's what this is about, you're looking for fighters." His perceptiveness surprised her. Most humans they captured seemed to have difficulty understanding their situation, but Marcus had clearly been observing and thinking about what he had seen. "You understand what's happening here?" Zara asked, her curiosity overriding her usual professional detachment. Marcus stood up, approaching the barrier between them. "I understand enough. You're collecting different species, testing them, probably for some kind of combat selection. What I don't understand is why you bother with humans. We're not exactly known for being galactic powerhouses." Zara studied his face as he spoke. There was intelligence there, and a calmness that she found unusual. Most specimens in his situation would be showing signs of stress, fear, or anger. Marcus seemed almost analytical about his circumstances. "What would you say if I told you that your species might be more than you appear to be?" she asked, testing his reaction. Marcus tilted his head slightly, considering her words. "I'd say that either you're mistaken, or we've been hiding something from ourselves for a very long time." The response intrigued her even more. He wasn't dismissing the possibility or reacting with typical human pride. He was thinking about it logically. "Would you be willing to undergo additional testing?" Zara asked. "More extensive than what we've done so far." "Do I have a choice?" "Actually, yes.
The tests I'm considering would require your cooperation.
They can't be performed on an unwilling subject. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, clearly weighing his options.
What kind of tests? Genetic activation protocols. Stress response analysis. Combat simulation. And if I refuse? Zara hesitated.
Normally, the answer would be that he would remain in detention until they reached their next collection point, or he would be sold to one of the slave markets that supplied laborers to mining worlds. It was a grim fate, but typical for specimens that didn't make the selection. But something about Marcus made her want to be honest with him. If you refuse, you'll probably spend the rest of your life doing manual labor on some industrial world. If you agree to the testing, there's a chance you might become something more than you ever imagined possible. And if the testing kills me? That's also a possibility. Marcus nodded slowly, as if he had expected that answer.
Can I ask you something? Go ahead. Why humans? I mean, really.
There have to be hundreds of species stronger than us, faster than us, with better technology.
What made you think we might be worth testing? Zara looked at him for a long moment, trying to decide how much to reveal.
Finally, she made a decision that would change both of their lives. Your blood work came back showing genetic markers that shouldn't exist. Patterns that match theoretical models of the most powerful warrior species in galactic history. Marcus's expression didn't change, but she saw something flicker in his eyes, not surprise, but recognition. You've heard of the progenitors? She asked. Old stories, Marcus said slowly. Legends about warriors who could adapt to any environment, heal from any wound, fight anything and win.
Most people think they're myths. What if they're not myths? What if they're memories?
Marcus stared at her through the barrier, and, for the first time since she had started studying specimens, Zara felt like she was looking at something that might be looking back at her with equal intensity. If you're right, Marcus said finally, then, my people have been living a lie for a very long time.
Are you willing to find out the truth? Marcus didn't hesitate. Yes.
As Zara began making arrangements for the most comprehensive genetic testing protocol ever attempted, she found herself wondering if she had just made the greatest discovery in scientific history, or if she had just awakened something that the galaxy had forgotten for very good reasons. The next few days would change everything she thought she knew about humans, about the galaxy, and about the true nature of power itself. The next morning brought revelations that shattered every assumption Zara had held about human physiology. She had spent the entire night running preliminary tests on Marcus, and each result was more impossible than the last. Marcus sat calmly in the advanced medical scanning chamber, a room lined with sensors capable of analyzing every molecule in his body. Most specimens found the experience overwhelming. The scanners generated electromagnetic fields that could be felt as subtle vibrations, and the knowledge that their entire biological structure was being examined down to the cellular level usually induced anxiety.
Marcus seemed almost meditative. Tell me about your homeworld, Zara said as she calibrated the next series of scans.
She had learned that keeping him talking helped maintain the relaxed state that produced the most accurate readings.
New Montana? Not much to tell. Mining colony established about 200 years ago. My family worked the deep mines, extracting rare metals for trade with other colonies.
Hard work, but honest work.
Did you ever notice anything unusual about yourself? Faster healing than others? Ability to work in conditions that affected others more severely? Marcus considered this carefully. Actually, yes. I always thought I was just lucky, or maybe tougher than most.
I could work double shifts in the deep mines where others would get sick from the atmospheric pressure changes. When I got injured, which happened a lot in that kind of work, I always healed faster than the medics expected. The scanners chimed, indicating completion of another analysis cycle. Zara reviewed the data, and her excitement grew with each new discovery. Marcus's bone density was 30% higher than baseline human measurements. His muscle fiber composition included structures that shouldn't exist in any known species, fibers that could contract with force comparable to hydraulic systems while remaining flexible enough to allow normal movement. Most remarkably, his nervous system showed adaptations that would allow for reaction times approaching the theoretical limits of biological possibility. The neural pathways in his brain were structured in ways that suggested he could process information and make decisions faster than most electronic systems. Marcus, I need to ask you to try something, and I want you to stop immediately if you feel any discomfort.
What kind of something? Zara activated a holographic display showing a complex three-dimensional puzzle, the kind used to test problem-solving capabilities in highly advanced artificial intelligences. I want you to solve this as quickly as possible.
The puzzle materialized in front of Marcus as a manipulable hologram. It consisted of hundreds of interlocking pieces that needed to be arranged in a specific pattern, with multiple variables that affected each piece's position. The current galactic record for solving this puzzle was held by a Krillian academic who had taken 47 minutes. Marcus studied the puzzle for approximately 10 seconds, then began moving pieces with fluid, confident motions.
His hands moved so quickly that the recording equipment had difficulty tracking the movements. Within 3 minutes, the puzzle was complete. Zara stared at the display in disbelief. She ran the recording back in slow motion, trying to understand how he had solved it so quickly. Even watching the replay, she couldn't follow his logic. It was as if he had seen the solution immediately and simply executed it.
Have you solved puzzles like this before? She asked. No, but it wasn't really difficult.
The pattern was obvious once I looked at it.
Zara realized she needed to escalate her testing protocols. She contacted her research team and requested access to the ship's advanced combat simulation chambers. If Marcus's genetic potential was what the tests suggested, she needed to see how it manifested under pressure. The combat simulation chamber was a large open space equipped with holographic projectors and force field generators that could create realistic combat scenarios. It was typically used to evaluate the fighting capabilities of potential specimens, and had safety protocols designed to prevent serious injury while still providing accurate assessments of combat potential. Marcus entered the chamber wearing basic protective gear, lightweight armor and energy shields that would protect him from lethal damage while still allowing the simulation to register hits and assess performance. Zara observed from the control room, surrounded by monitors that would track every aspect of his performance.
We'll start with a basic scenario, Zara announced through the communication system.
Single opponent, moderate difficulty. The chamber filled with light as the holographic projectors activated, creating a simulation of a Krillian warrior in full combat armor. The simulated opponent was based on actual combat records from previous trials, programmed with the fighting techniques and capabilities of a seasoned Krillian soldier. Marcus faced the holographic warrior, and Zara was surprised to see him smile slightly. It wasn't the nervous expression of someone facing a frightening challenge, but the look of someone who was genuinely interested in what was about to happen. The combat began. What Zara witnessed in the next few minutes changed her understanding of what was possible in hand-to-hand combat. Marcus moved with a fluidity and precision that she had never seen in any species. He didn't just react to his opponent's attacks, he seemed to anticipate them, positioning himself to counter moves that hadn't yet been made. The simulated Krillian warrior was programmed with centuries of combat experience and fighting techniques that had proven effective against dozens of different species.
Against Marcus, these advantages seemed meaningless.
He flowed around attacks like water, struck with precision that found weaknesses in armor that shouldn't have been visible, and demonstrated an understanding of leverage and momentum that defied his apparent lack of formal combat training. Within 2 minutes, the simulation ended with the holographic warrior defeated. Increase difficulty to maximum, Zara ordered, her voice barely steady. The second simulation created 3 opponents simultaneously: a Krillian warrior, a Vorthan berserker, and an Altarian combat specialist. These were among the most dangerous fighters in known space, each representing a different style of warfare that had proven effective in previous trials.
Marcus didn't hesitate.
He engaged all 3 opponents simultaneously, using their own positioning against them, turning their advantages into vulnerabilities. He moved through the combat like he was performing a dance that he had rehearsed his entire life.
The simulation ended in 4 minutes with all 3 opponents defeated.
Computer, analyze human performance parameters and compare to species combat ratings, Zara commanded. The computer's response made her sit down heavily in her chair.
Human specimen demonstrates combat capabilities exceeding all known species in database. Estimated combat rating, unprecedented. Recommendation: review calibration of simulation systems for potential malfunction. Zara ran the simulation again, then, a third time with different parameters. Each result was the same. Marcus performed at a level that exceeded every fighting species in the galactic database. When Marcus emerged from the simulation chamber, he wasn't even breathing heavily. "That was interesting," he said. "Is that how other species fight? You've never received combat training of any kind?" "No formal training. We learned to defend ourselves on New Montana. Mining colonies can be rough places, and there were sometimes conflicts with raiders or rival mining operations. But nothing like what I just experienced." Zara realized she needed to understand more about human society and history. If Marcus wasn't unique among his species, if these capabilities were simply dormant in humans rather than being a one-time genetic anomaly, then everything the galaxy believed about human weakness was not just wrong, it was catastrophically wrong. "Marcus, I need to ask you about human history. Specifically about warfare." Marcus leaned against the wall, considering her question. "What do you want to know? How long have humans been capable of interplanetary travel?" "About 300 years for practical interplanetary flight. We've only had faster-than-light capability for about 50 years. "And before that? When you were confined to your homeworld?" Marcus's expression grew thoughtful. "We fought. A lot. For thousands of years, we fought each other over territory, resources, ideas, sometimes just because we wanted to fight. We developed weapons and tactics and strategies. We fought wars that involved millions of people, with technologies that could destroy entire cities." Zara felt a chill run down her spine. "You fought each other? For thousands of years?" "The history books say that at one point, we had enough weapons to destroy our entire planet several times over. We fought wars on land, at sea, in the air, and, eventually in space around our homeworld. We fought with everything from simple tools to sophisticated weapons that could eliminate armies." "Why did you stop?" Marcus smiled grimly. "We didn't really stop. We just got better at it. When we met other species and realized we weren't alone in the galaxy, we figured out that fighting each other was inefficient. But the capability is still there." Zara began to understand the implications of what she had discovered. Humans hadn't become weak when they encountered other galactic species, they had been deliberately underestimating their own capabilities. For reasons she didn't yet understand, they had chosen to present themselves as primitive and harmless. "Marcus, do you think other humans have capabilities similar to yours?" "I think every human has capabilities they don't know about," Marcus replied. "We've been living in a galaxy where everyone assumes we're weak and primitive. There hasn't been any reason to prove otherwise. Until now." Until now. Zara realized she was facing a decision that would affect not just her research, but, potentially, the entire balance of power in the galaxy. If humans possessed combat capabilities that exceeded all known species, and if they had been hiding this fact for decades, then the upcoming trial of supremacy could become something entirely unexpected. Marcus, the trial of supremacy is a combat competition between the greatest warriors of all galactic species. The winner's species gains political dominance for the next century. Would you be willing to represent humanity in this trial? Marcus looked at her steadily. Against the best fighters the galaxy has to offer? Yes. And if I win? Then, humanity would gain political power that would change your species' position in the galaxy forever. And if I lose? Then, you die, and humanity remains exactly where it is now, at the bottom of the galactic power structure. Marcus considered this for a long moment. There's something you should know about humans, Dr. Velthera. We've always been at our best when everyone else thought we were finished. As Zara watched Marcus walk back to his quarters, she realized that she might have just recruited the most dangerous being in the galaxy to fight for a species that no one else knew was dangerous at all. 3 days later, Zara found herself in the most difficult situation of her career. She stood before the High Council of the Krillian Empire, a semicircle of the most powerful and intelligent beings her species had ever produced.
Their pale blue skin seemed to shimmer in the council chamber's lighting, and their four eyes, a mark of Krillian genetic superiority, focused on her with an intensity that would have intimidated most beings in the galaxy.
The council chamber was aboard the Imperial Dominance, the flagship of the Krillian fleet.
It was a massive ship, 10 times larger than her research vessel, and home to the political and military leadership that had guided the Krillian Empire to 3 consecutive victories in the Trial of Supremacy. High Counselor Vexthran, the oldest and most respected member of the council, spoke first. Dr. Velthera, your report suggests that you have identified a specimen with combat capabilities that exceed our current champion.
This is a significant claim.
It's more than significant, High Counselor.
If my tests are accurate, this specimen could revolutionize our understanding of combat genetics entirely.
A human specimen, Counselor Nexvara added, her tone carrying obvious skepticism.
You're asking us to believe that a species we've considered barely above animal intelligence has produced a warrior superior to our finest genetic constructs? Zara had anticipated this reaction. The Krillian Empire had spent centuries perfecting their genetic enhancement programs.
Their current champion, Korgthul, was a masterwork of genetic engineering, 7 feet tall, with bone density and muscle mass that had been enhanced to the theoretical limits of biological possibility. He had won the previous trial by defeating opponents from 17 different species without sustaining a single serious injury. With respect, Counselor, I'm not asking you to believe anything based on my word alone.
I'm requesting permission to arrange a demonstration. High Counselor Vexthran's 4 eyes narrowed. You want to pit an untested human against our champion?
Not against Korgthul directly. I want to arrange a series of progressive tests that will demonstrate the human's capabilities while providing data we can use to make an informed decision about the upcoming trial. The council members exchanged glances in the complex visual language that allowed Krillians to communicate silently. After several minutes of silent discussion, High Counselor Vexthran spoke again. Dr. Velthera, the Trial of Supremacy is only 6 weeks away. If we decide to change our champion at this late stage and our selection proves inferior to Korgthul, the consequences for our empire could be catastrophic. The Vorthan Empire has been developing their genetic programs specifically to counter our previous victories. The Altarian Confederacy has alliance agreements that will give them significant advantages if they win political dominance. We cannot afford to lose this trial based on an unproven theory.
I understand the stakes, High Counselor.
But, I also understand that if we continue using predictable genetic enhancement strategies, our opponents will eventually develop counters that will defeat us regardless.
This human represents something completely unexpected.
Counselor Zekmoth, who had remained silent until now, spoke up.
What specific capabilities has this specimen demonstrated? Zara activated her holographic display, showing the combat simulation recordings. Computer, display combat analysis for specimen Marcus Chun.
The council chamber filled with 3-dimensional recordings of Marcus's performance in the simulation chamber. The council members watched in silence as Marcus defeated multiple opponents with techniques that none of them recognized. Computer, analysis of combat techniques observed, High Counselor Vexthran commanded.
Analysis inconclusive. Fighting style does not match any known martial traditions in galactic database.
Techniques appear to be improvised but demonstrate understanding of advanced combat principles.
Estimated learning curve for these techniques, unknown.
Dr. Velthera, Counselor Nexvara said slowly, these recordings show capabilities that exceed our theoretical models for unenhanced biological performance.
Are you certain your equipment was functioning correctly? I've run the tests multiple times with different equipment. The results are consistent.
High Counselor Vexthran stood, his impressive height dominating the council chamber.
Very well.
We will arrange a controlled test. Your human specimen will face 3 challenges of increasing difficulty. If he succeeds, we will consider him as a potential champion. If he fails, we proceed with Korgthul as planned.
What kind of challenges?
First, combat against our second-tier genetic constructs, warriors who are capable but not at the level of our primary champion.
Second, survival testing under extreme conditions that simulate the environment of the trial arena. Third, if he succeeds at the first 2, direct combat against Korgthul. Zara felt her hearts racing.
The third challenge was essentially a death sentence. Korgthal had never been defeated in combat, and he had killed dozens of opponents during training exercises.
High Counselor, direct combat against Korgthal could result in the death of the human specimen. Dr. Velthera, the trial of supremacy could result in the death of whichever champion we select.
If this human cannot survive combat against our current champion, he certainly cannot survive the trial itself. The logic was sound, but Zara found herself feeling protective of Marcus in a way that surprised her. Over the past few days, she had spent hours talking with him, learning about human culture and history. She had discovered an intelligence and perspective that was completely different from any species she had studied. I'll need time to prepare the specimen for these challenges.
You have 1 week. The tests will be conducted aboard the Imperial Dominance under the observation of the full council.
As Zara made her way back to her research vessel, she realized she had just committed herself to a path that could either revolutionize the galaxy or result in the death of the most remarkable being she had ever encountered. She found Marcus in the ship's recreation area, a small chamber equipped with basic exercise equipment and entertainment systems. He was reading from a holographic display a text on Krillian military history that she had provided when he expressed curiosity about the Empire's previous trial victories.
Interesting reading, she asked. Marcus looked up with a slight smile. Very interesting. Your people have an impressive understanding of strategic warfare.
But I noticed that all of your victories have come from genetic enhancement and superior technology. You rely on being stronger and faster than your opponents.
Is that a problem? It's not a problem, it's just one approach.
In human warfare, we learned that the strongest and fastest doesn't always win. Sometimes the winner is whoever adapts most quickly to changing conditions.
Marcus, I need to tell you about the next phase of testing.
She explained the council's decision and the challenges he would face. Marcus listened without interruption, occasionally nodding as she described each test.
So the third challenge is essentially a fight to the death against your best warrior?
Yes.
And if I refuse? Then, you remain as you are, and my people select their current champion for the trial.
Marcus stood up and walked to the chamber's small viewport, looking out at the stars.
Tell me about this trial. What exactly happens? The trial of supremacy takes place on a neutral world chosen by the Galactic Council.
It's a series of combat challenges designed to test every aspect of a warrior's capabilities: individual combat, tactical thinking, adaptation to changing conditions, and survival skills. The challenges are different every time, but they're designed to push participants beyond their limits.
How many participants usually die? Zara hesitated.
Historically, the survival rate is about 60%.
And the winner? The winner's species gains political dominance over the Andromeda Coalition for 100 years.
They control trade routes, resource allocation, colonization rights, and military policy. Marcus turned back to face her.
What would that mean for humanity? If you won?
Your species would go from being considered a minor nuisance to being the dominant power in the galaxy. Your people would have access to technology and resources that would advance your civilization by thousands of years.
And if I lose? If you lose, humanity remains exactly where it is now. Marcus sat back down, studying her face. What do you get out of this, Dr. Velthera? Why are you taking this risk?
The question caught her off guard. She had been so focused on the scientific implications and the potential consequences that she hadn't really examined her own motivations. I suppose I've spent my entire career trying to understand what makes the perfect warrior. When I look at your test results, when I watch you fight, I see something that challenges everything I thought I knew about genetics and combat. I want to know how far that potential can go.
That's the scientist's answer.
What's the personal answer?
Zara considered his question carefully.
I think I believe that the galaxy needs to change. The same species have dominated galactic politics for centuries, using the same strategies, fighting the same fights. Maybe it's time for someone completely different to show everyone what's possible.
Marcus nodded slowly. Dr. Velthera, there's something I should tell you about humans. What's that? We've been watching the galaxy for a lot longer than anyone realizes. We've been learning, studying, preparing.
When our species first encountered the galactic community, we made a conscious decision to appear weaker than we actually are.
Why?
Because we knew that if we revealed our true capabilities, every other species would see us as a threat. We've spent the last 50 years learning everything we could about galactic warfare, technology, and politics.
We've been waiting for the right opportunity to demonstrate what we're really capable of.
Zara stared at him, the implications of his words slowly sinking in.
You're saying that humanity has been deliberately hiding their strength?
I'm saying that humanity has been preparing for a war that we hoped would never come. But, if we have to fight, we've learned everything we need to know about how to win.
How many humans know about this?
Enough, Marcus said.
And, they all know that I'm here.
Zara realized that what she had thought was a simple genetic discovery might actually be the opening move in a much larger game, one that could reshape the entire galaxy. The first challenge began in the primary combat arena aboard the Imperial Dominance. Zara stood in the observation gallery alongside the High Council, watching as Marcus prepared to face 3 Krillian genetic constructs simultaneously. These weren't the Empire's finest warriors, but they were still formidable opponents, each one the product of centuries of genetic enhancement and combat training. The arena itself was a marvel of engineering, a massive chamber that could simulate any environment or conditions needed for testing combat capabilities. Today it was configured as a basic combat space, a circular area with various obstacles and terrain features that could be used tactically by skilled fighters. Marcus entered the arena wearing lightweight combat armor, similar to what the Krillian warriors wore. Zara had insisted on equivalent protective gear to ensure the test would be as fair as possible. The 3 Krillian constructs were designated Alpha, Beta, and Gamma, each specialized for different aspects of combat. Alpha was built for speed and precision, with enhanced nervous system modifications that allowed for extremely fast reaction times. Beta was designed for strength and durability, with dense bone structure and muscle mass that could deliver devastating attacks. Gamma was optimized for tactical thinking and adaptation, with neural enhancements that allowed for rapid analysis of combat situations.
Begin combat simulation, High Counselor Vexthran announced.
The 3 Krillian warriors moved to surround Marcus, positioning themselves to attack from multiple angles simultaneously. It was a standard tactic for outnumbered opponents, force them to divide their attention and create openings for coordinated attacks. Marcus stood calmly in the center of their formation, turning slowly to keep all 3 opponents in view. To the observers in the gallery, he appeared relaxed, almost casual about the deadly situation he faced. Alpha attacked first, moving with blinding speed to strike at Marcus from behind. Without turning around, Marcus sidestepped and grabbed Alpha's extended arm, using the construct's own momentum to throw him into Beta's path. The collision disrupted Beta's planned attack and created an opening that Marcus exploited by landing a precise strike to Beta's shoulder joint, temporarily disabling the construct's left arm. Gamma attempted to capitalize on the confusion by attacking from Marcus's blind spot, but Marcus seemed to sense the attack before it developed. He spun and caught Gamma's strike, redirecting the force in a way that sent the construct stumbling across the arena. Within 30 seconds, all 3 opponents were on the defensive.
Impossible, Counselor Nexvara whispered.
He's fighting like he can predict their movements. Zara watched with fascination as Marcus continued to demonstrate capabilities that exceeded her most optimistic projections. He wasn't just reacting to attacks, he was anticipating them, positioning himself to turn his opponent's advantages against them. When Alpha used enhanced speed, Marcus was already positioned to counter the attack. When Beta relied on superior strength, Marcus used leverage and timing to make that strength irrelevant.
The most remarkable aspect of his performance was how effortless it appeared.
The 3 Krillian constructs were working at their maximum capability, using every enhancement and technique they had been programmed with. Marcus looked like he was barely exerting himself. Computer analysis of human combat performance, High Counselor Vexthran commanded.
Human specimen is demonstrating real-time tactical adaptation at unprecedented levels. Combat techniques appear to be improvised responses to opponent capabilities.
No matching patterns found in database of known fighting styles.
The combat continued for another 10 minutes before all 3 Krillian constructs were defeated.
None of them had been killed. Marcus had precisely disabled each opponent without causing permanent injury, demonstrating a level of control that impressed even the critical council members.
Challenge 1 completed successfully, High Counselor Vexthran announced. Prepare for Challenge 2.
The second challenge took place in the environmental simulation chambers, a series of interconnected spaces that could replicate the conditions found on any known world. The test of supremacy was famous for including challenges in extreme environments that would test a warrior's ability to adapt and survive under conditions that would kill most beings. For this test, the chamber was configured to simulate the surface of Kethmoran, a world known for its extreme gravitational fields, toxic atmosphere, and predatory wildlife. The gravity was set to 3 times galactic standard, the air contained chemical compounds that were lethal to most species, and the environment included simulated creatures that had been responsible for the deaths of numerous previous trial participants. Marcus entered the chamber wearing a basic environmental suit that provided minimal protection, enough to prevent immediate death from the atmospheric conditions, but not enough to make survival easy. He would need to navigate through the simulated environment, locate a series of objectives, and reach the exit point within a specified time limit. Zara monitored his progress from the control room, watching his vital signs and performance metrics. Most beings who attempted this simulation experienced immediate stress responses from the gravity and atmospheric conditions.
Marcus's readings showed remarkable stability. How is he adapting to the increased gravity so quickly? Counselor Zekmoth asked.
Human physiology includes remarkable adaptation mechanisms, Zara replied. But this level of adaptation is far beyond anything I expected. Marcus moved through the simulated environment with fluid efficiency. When he encountered the first predatory creature, a simulated Kethmoran hunter that stood 10 feet tall and was equipped with natural armor that could deflect energy weapons, he didn't attempt to fight it directly. Instead, he used the environment against the creature, manipulating the terrain to create a trap that eliminated the threat without direct combat.
He's thinking tactically, Counselor Nexbara observed.
Not just adapting to the environment, but using it as a weapon. The second objective required Marcus to traverse a section of unstable terrain while avoiding atmospheric storms that could kill an unprotected being in seconds. Instead of following the obvious safe path, Marcus analyzed the storm patterns and found a route that used the storms themselves as cover, allowing him to move through areas that appeared impossible to navigate. By the time Marcus reached the final objective, even the skeptical council members were beginning to acknowledge that they were witnessing something unprecedented.
He completed the environmental challenge in less than half the time typically required by successful participants. Challenge 2 completed successfully, High Counselor Vexthran announced. Prepare chamber for Challenge 3. Challenge 3 would be direct combat against Korgthul.
The Krillian champion was a masterwork of genetic engineering and combat training. Standing 7 feet tall with a build that represented the theoretical peak of biological enhancement, he had never been defeated in combat. His genetic modifications included enhanced strength, speed, durability, and healing factors that approached the limits of what biological systems could sustain. More importantly, Korgthul was experienced. He had fought opponents from dozens of different species and had developed techniques specifically designed to counter the advantages that each species typically relied upon. Marcus entered the arena to face his final challenge, and, for the first time since the testing began, Zara felt genuine fear for his safety. The previous challenges had been difficult but not necessarily lethal. This would be a fight to the death, or at least to decisive defeat. Korgthul stood waiting in the center of the arena, his massive form radiating confidence and power. He had watched Marcus's previous performances and had undoubtedly developed strategies specifically designed to counter the human's demonstrated capabilities.
Begin final combat, High Counselor Vexthran announced. The two warriors faced each other across the arena, each studying their opponent.
Korgthul moved first, advancing with careful steps that demonstrated his experience and training. He had learned not to underestimate opponents based on appearances.
Marcus remained stationary until Korgthul was within striking range, then moved with explosive speed that surprised even Zara.
His first attack was a feint designed to test the champion's defenses, and Korgthul's response revealed information about his fighting style and capabilities.
What followed was the most intense combat Zara had ever witnessed.
Korgthul fought with the precision and power that had made him champion, using techniques that had defeated every challenger for the past 3 trials. His strikes could have shattered stone, his speed was barely visible to unenhanced vision, and his tactical thinking demonstrated centuries of combat experience. Marcus fought with something else entirely, an intuitive understanding of combat that seemed to transcend technique or training. He didn't just counter Korgthal's attacks, he anticipated them. He didn't just avoid the champion's strengths, he turned them into vulnerabilities. 20 minutes into the combat, something changed. Korgthal began to show signs of fatigue, while Marcus appeared to be gaining strength. The human's movements became more fluid, more precise, more devastating. It was as if the combat itself was activating dormant capabilities that even the testing hadn't revealed. His genetic markers are changing, Zara announced, watching the real-time biological monitoring systems. His cellular energy production is increasing beyond normal parameters. His neural activity is accelerating. What does that mean? High Counselor Vextran demanded. I think it means that combat stress is triggering genetic activation sequences. He's literally becoming stronger during the fight. On the arena floor, the tide of battle was turning decisively. Korgthal, despite all his enhancements and experience, was being systematically overwhelmed by an opponent who seemed to improve with every exchange. The end came suddenly. Marcus executed a combination of moves that bypassed all of Korgthal's defenses and delivered a precise strike that rendered the champion unconscious without causing permanent injury. The arena fell silent. Marcus stood over the defeated champion, breathing heavily but clearly victorious. He looked up at the observation gallery where the council members stared down at him in stunned silence. Challenge 3 completed, he said simply. High Counselor Vextran stood slowly, his four eyes focused entirely on Marcus. When he spoke, his voice carried a weight that Zara had never heard before. Dr. Velthera, your specimen has exceeded all expectations. The council will convene to make a final decision, but I believe we have found our champion for the trial of supremacy. As Marcus left the arena, he paused beside Zara. Dr. Velthera, you should know that everything you've seen today is just the beginning. If the galaxy wants to see what humans are really capable of, the trial will be very educational. Zara realized that she had not just discovered a superior warrior, she had awakened something that might change the fundamental balance of power in the galaxy forever. The trial of supremacy took place on Nexus Prime, a neutral world that existed solely to host the centennial competition that determined galactic political dominance. The planet's surface had been entirely transformed into a massive arena complex, with environments that could simulate any world in known space and challenges that tested every aspect of a warrior's capabilities. Representatives from 43 different species had gathered to witness the trial, along with billions of viewers across the galaxy who watched through holographic broadcasts. The previous 3 trials had ended with Krillian victories, and most observers expected this one to follow the same pattern. Zara stood in the Krillian observation area, watching as Marcus prepared for the competition that would determine not just his fate, but potentially the future of human civilization. Over the past month since his selection, she had continued studying his genetic patterns and had made discoveries that challenged everything she thought she knew about biological evolution. Marcus's genetic code contained dormant sequences that activated under specific stress conditions. Each challenge he faced seemed to unlock new capabilities, as if his DNA contained a vast library of potential adaptations that could be accessed when needed. It was as if humans had evolved not for a specific environment, but for the ability to evolve rapidly in response to any environment. Nervous about your choice? High Counselor Vextran asked, joining her at the observation window. Curious, Zara replied. I have a feeling we're about to learn something about humans that will surprise everyone. He's facing the finest warriors in the galaxy. The Vorthan Empire has sent Grakthar, who has never been defeated in single combat. The Altarian Confederacy's champion has genetic modifications that allow her to adapt her physical properties in real time. The Zirian Collective has created a warrior with crystalline armor that can deflect energy weapons. These are not the opponents he faced during testing. No, Zara agreed. They're probably not as dangerous as he is. The trial began with individual combat challenges. Each species champion would face a series of opponents designed to test different aspects of their fighting capabilities. The challenges increased in difficulty, and participants could be eliminated by defeat, injury, or death. Marcus's first opponent was a Thraxian warrior, a reptilian humanoid with natural armor plating and venomous claws that had paralyzed opponents in previous trials. The Thraxians were known for their defensive fighting style and their ability to outlast opponents in extended combat.
The match lasted exactly 90 seconds.
Marcus moved with the same fluid precision Zara had observed during testing, but his technique seemed more refined, more devastating. He didn't just defeat the Thraxian warrior, he dismantled every defensive advantage the opponent possessed, using the creature's own armor against it and turning its venomous attacks into vulnerabilities.
How did he learn to counter Thraxian fighting techniques? Counselor Nexvara asked. Humans have never fought Thraxians before.
Maybe they have, Zara said quietly, remembering Marcus's comments about humanity's hidden observations of galactic warfare. Marcus's second opponent was a Vectorian hunter, a species known for their ability to become nearly invisible and strike from concealment. These battles typically lasted for hours as the combatants played a deadly game of hide and seek in complex terrain. Marcus ended the fight in under 5 minutes by doing something that no previous opponent had ever attempted. He ignored the Vectorian's concealment entirely and fought as if he could see his opponent perfectly. His attacks struck with precision that suggested he was tracking his invisible opponent through methods that the monitoring equipment couldn't detect.
Thermal vision? High Counselor Vexthran wondered. No, Zara said, studying the sensor readings. I think he's tracking microvibrations in the arena floor.
He's detecting his opponent's position through ground tremors that are too subtle for our equipment to register. By the end of the first day, Marcus had defeated 6 opponents without sustaining any significant injury. More remarkably, each victory had been achieved through completely different techniques, as if he was adapting his fighting style in real time to counter each opponent's specific advantages. The other champions were beginning to take notice. During the evening recess, Zara observed several of them studying recordings of Marcus's matches, clearly trying to identify patterns they could exploit. They're worried, Marcus said when Zara visited him in the competitors' quarters that evening.
Should they be?
Dr. Velthera, you've spent weeks studying my genetics and capabilities. But, you've been thinking about this as a scientific problem. The truth is that humans have been preparing for this trial for 50 years.
What do you mean?
Marcus activated a holographic display showing star charts and tactical analyses. When humans first encountered the galactic community, we realized that our position would always be determined by the trial of supremacy. We've spent 5 decades studying every species that participates, learning their fighting techniques, their strengths, their weaknesses.
How? We volunteered for military service with different species. We worked as mercenaries, bodyguards, security consultants.
Humans have fought alongside and against every major species in this trial.
We've learned everything there is to know about galactic warfare. Zara stared at the display, realizing the implications. You've been infiltrating other species' military organizations? We've been learning from them.
Every technique I've used in this trial is something humans learned from other species and improved upon. We took the best aspects of every fighting style in the galaxy and synthesized them into something new. But, your genetic capabilities are real.
But, they're not unique to me.
Every human has the potential for rapid adaptation and learning.
We've just been hiding it until we found the right opportunity to reveal it. The second day of the trial introduced environmental challenges. Competitors would face survival tests in conditions that replicated the most hostile environments in the galaxy.
Many previous trials had been decided during this phase, as warriors who excelled in direct combat often struggled to adapt to extreme environmental conditions. The first environment was a simulation of the ice world Krythmore, where temperatures dropped to levels that could freeze most beings solid within minutes. The challenge required competitors to navigate across unstable ice fields while avoiding predatory creatures adapted to the extreme cold. Marcus approached this challenge differently than his combat matches.
Instead of relying on superior technique or genetic adaptation, he demonstrated problem-solving capabilities that surprised even Zara.
He studied the ice formations and identified structural patterns that allowed him to move across surfaces that appeared impassable. He tracked the predatory creatures and identified behavioral patterns that let him avoid confrontation entirely. Most importantly, he completed the challenge faster than any competitor in trial history.
He's not just adapting to the environment, Counselor Zekmoth observed. He's mastering it.
The second environmental challenge took place in a toxic swamp that required competitors to find and retrieve specific objectives while avoiding poisonous flora and fauna. Previous competitors had typically relied on environmental suits and defensive equipment to minimize their exposure to the hazardous conditions.
Marcus removed his environmental suit entirely. What is he doing? High Counselor Vextran demanded. Zara watched her monitoring equipment in amazement.
His cellular chemistry is changing. His body is producing chemical compounds that neutralize the environmental toxins. He's literally adapting his physiology to become immune to the swamp's dangers. Within the toxic environment, Marcus moved with complete freedom. The poisonous plants that would have killed other competitors had no effect on him. The venomous creatures that other warriors had to avoid or fight he simply ignored, as their attacks couldn't harm him. He completed the challenge in record time and emerged from the swamp completely unharmed. By the end of the second day, only 5 competitors remained: Marcus, the Vorthan champion Grakthar, the Altarian champion Salandra, the Zirian collective's crystalline warrior Zexkorth, and, surprisingly, a champion from the previously unknown species called the Umbral Syndicate. The final day would consist of a single challenge: unrestricted combat between all remaining competitors. It would continue until only one champion remained standing. As the final challenge began, Zara realized she was about to witness something unprecedented. Marcus stood in the center of the arena facing 4 opponents, each representing the pinnacle of their species' genetic and technological achievements. Grakthar attacked first, moving with the berserker fury that had made the Vorths feared across the galaxy. His assault was met by Salandra's adaptive combat style, as her body shifted to counter his attacks while she positioned herself to strike at Marcus. Zexkorth used his crystalline armor to deflect attacks while building energy for devastating ranged strikes. The Umbral champion moved with techniques that none of the observers recognized, suggesting capabilities that had been hidden until this moment. Marcus stood at the center of this maelstrom of violence and did something that no one expected: he smiled. Then, he began to fight like nothing anyone in the galaxy had ever seen. His movements were fluid and precise, but, more than that, they were adaptive in real time. When Grakthar's berserker rage made him predictable, Marcus exploited that predictability. When Salandra adapted her body to counter his attacks, Marcus adapted his techniques faster than she could respond. When Zexkorth's crystalline armor deflected his strikes, Marcus found frequencies that made the armor resonate and shatter. The Umbral champion lasted the longest, demonstrating techniques that suggested their species had also been hiding their true capabilities. But, even their hidden strengths weren't sufficient to match Marcus's exponentially improving combat performance. In the end, Marcus stood alone in the arena, surrounded by 4 defeated opponents, all unconscious but alive, as he had somehow managed to avoid killing any of them despite the unrestricted nature of the final challenge. The arena fell completely silent as the implications of what they had witnessed began to sink in. High Counselor Vexthran's voice carried across the arena through the communication systems. By the authority of the Galactic Council and the laws governing the Trial of Supremacy, I declare Marcus Chen of Earth the victor of the Centennial Trial. Political dominance of the Andromeda Coalition is hereby granted to humanity for the next 100 years. As Marcus looked up at the observation galleries filled with representatives from across the galaxy, Zara realized that everything was about to change. Humanity had just announced their presence as the galaxy's dominant species, and they had done it by revealing capabilities that no one else had known existed. Dr. Velthara, Marcus said, his voice carrying clearly through the arena, thank you for giving humanity the opportunity to show the galaxy what we're really capable of. Zara smiled as she watched Marcus leave the arena. She had set out to find the perfect warrior specimen, but what she had actually discovered was that the galaxy's most dangerous species had been hiding in plain sight for 50 years. The blood match results had indeed left her speechless. But Marcus Chen had proven to be much more than her final pick. He had become humanity's introduction to their new role as the galaxy's apex predators. As representatives from 43 species tried to process the implications of humanity's victory, Zara realized that the real trial was just beginning. The galaxy was about to learn that humans weren't just surprisingly capable warriors, they were a species that had been preparing for galactic dominance since the day they first reached the stars. And, now that preparation was complete,